Welcome back, folks. I've been getting a lot of questions about the xlite Pro since my initial review video. A lot of things have changed, and my opinion on this radio has changed a little bit as well. A lot of the questions I get are, do you recommend this now? And that's kind of a loaded question. If you are just getting into this hobby and you don't have any other gear, absolutely go with this guy. If you like the form factor, if you like the way it fits your hands. Otherwise, this is your another good option here is the xlite. But as far as mini quads go, I'm kind of staying away from the QX7 and the X9D, X9D SE. They're too big, they're too heavy for what we do. If you fly a lot of fixed wing and you've got flaps and retracts and all that stuff, yeah, then okay, X9D, gotcha. But for what we do, you don't need all that. You don't need all the bulkiness. You don't need the heft. You don't need all the switches, the pots, the trims, all that junk. You don't need it. Honestly, you need something like this. This is more than enouga couple gimbals and like 2 switches. Really all you need. Now, the big thing with the xlite Pro over the original xlite was D8 mode, access protocol versus the ACCST. None of that has really changed a whole lot. Still does not support D8 unless you use a multi-protocol module, which this works just fine, but only on the nightly firmwares. So if you have D8 receivers and you don't mind running a nightly and you need a new radio and you want something small like this, I still recommend going with the xlite Pro because you're kind of future-proofing yourself. The whole point of Frsky getting away from D8, in my opinion, is to get away from the problems that come with using the wrong communication protocol in the wrong region of the world. Because the idea of this radio is it's region locked. They didn't design this to be able to switch from LBT to EU just so you can see what works. They're, in my opinion, trying to preserve our ability to have the bands that we have by complying with the regional requirements for communications. And with D8, they really can't do that. So D8 is going away. And with this radio, you're future-proofing yourself because now you are looking at things going forward like R9 over-the-air receivers, things down the road that this radio can do that this one probably won't be able to do because the internal module is different. Now, this should eventually support access, but I have a feeling kind of like how the R9 receivers are not, well, they're not going to have the same functionality as the new R9 OTA receivers. There's a hardware limitation in there, and I believe that this will probably also have a hardware limitation. I don't know this for a fact, but this will probably have a hardware limitation. Same thing with the X9D, the QX7, not the X9 Lite because it's basically the same hardware as this guy, just in a different case and gimbals and all that. But if you have a ton of D8 quads and you don't want a multi-protocol module and you don't want to run nightlies, then yeah, go with the xlite, the original one rather than the Pro. And like I said, the stock firmware still doesn't support multi-protocol, doesn't support crossfire, but the nightlies do. And eventually, hopefully, the Frsky, the official OpenTX firmware will support all that stuff. And the access. It does work on D16 with access. Works great. It works great on D16 with ACCST. Works perfectly fine. The R9M Lite works fine with the stock OEM firmware. Well, not the stock firmware, but the firmware that's on the Frsky website. Works great with that. As far as the form factor goes, as far as the differences between the two radios goes, there's not a whole lot. The gimbals obviously are different. This has internal charging through USB for the 18500s on the top. Still a little bit, it's a little bit different. You've got 2 momentary buttons here. And the thing I really didn't like about this is how stinking short these bottom switches are, and I usually use that one for arming. These are just a tiny bit longer, And that really makes a big difference. I don't know if you can see the difference there, but they're a little bit longer, and it's just right. It's just the right amount of length. Kind of a mixed bag. You won't go wrong getting this. This will last you way into the future, but as the new receivers come out, you might be left behind a little bit with this guy as opposed to this one, as far as being able to utilize all the features. Another topic that I'd like to touch on is the promise of over-the-air firmware updates. Now, as far as R9 goes, I don't know if you've been following along, but they've released some announcement on the new R9 OTA receivers. And I talked to my contact at Frsky, and unfortunately, the existing R9 stuff will not be able to do over-the-air updating. It's a hardware limitation of the R9 receivers that are on the market right now. So the thought of over-the-air for your existing stuff it's out of the question. Now, I did ask, well, what about the 2.4 gigahertz stuff? And he couldn't confirm that they have the same hardware limitation, and he hasn't heard anything about a hardware limitation on the 2.4. But as of right now, definitely the R9 stuff, the 900 megahertz. Yeah, the existing stuff on the market is not over-the-air updatable, unfortunately. And that's a huge bummer. I was really looking forward to that, but oh well, guess not. I have been using this radio quite a bit, and compared to my original xlite, honestly, I don't feel a whole lot of difference. The gimbal is, I don't know, I don't know about smoother, but it feels more solid. I don't know if it's just because of the extra mass of being all aluminum rather than plastic. I do prefer the way this feels in almost every way as opposed to this. And then the two momentary buttons, that's huge for me. So you can do your pre-arm, or at least that's how I do pre-arm, and my lost model alarm. But you know, that's just how I set things up. I do like the fact that it has charging built into it from the factory. No need to add boards or modules to it. It's compact, it's small, it's light. I really like this. No neck strap required. It simplifies the operation of going to fly, because I don't have to have a separate charger for this. I don't have to have a neck strap. It's literally just grab it and go. And it doesn't take up much space, and it's not very heavy, especially if you do a lot of traveling. My back appreciates carrying this little tiny thing as opposed to my big old X9D. I don't mind the smaller gimbals. I find that even with full-size gimbals, I don't ever hit the outsides of the travel. But you know, that is something that you will have to get used to if you've been flying something with a full-size gimbal. And then, you know, the X9 Lite is on the market, and this is a full-size gimbal, and this radio is a lot smaller and a lot lighter than my old X9D. Like if you want like a full-size, like something to hang on to radio, not like the controller, like the video game controller, this is another really good recommendation. This radio has been working really, really well for me. I really like the way it feels. I've been goofing around with trying to jam an M7 gimbal in there. This is not easy to do. I spent a lot of time designing a 3D print to get the M7 gimbal to fit in here without really altering the inside of the radio too much. Only thing I've had to do was kind of trim down the excess material on the inner trim switch. I got another gimbal coming. I'll probably do a video on that when I get it. This is more of a proof of concept before I plunk down extra cash for another M7 gimbal. But yeah, so I mean, it's possible, but it's not super easy. But there'll be a follow-up on that. Anyways, this is a very good radio if you like this traditional form factor with a full-size gimbal, by the way. And then the other elephant in the room, and believe me, this is an elephant in the room, is this guy here. The Frsky, well, this one's actually the Underground FPV Nirvana. Out of all the radios I've used, and I've had the QX7, the X9D, one of the older Frsky i6, whatever one came with the Wizard back in the day, the xlites, the X9 lights. This is by far the best feeling radio I have ever had in my hands. This thing is, I know every reviewer says it feels like it's cut out of granite, and they're not wrong. Like, you get a hold of it, this thing is solid piece of equipment. The gimbals feel really good. They feel like they have a little bit less throw than like a full-size gimbal on like this, but it's definitely more than the xlite. The only downside with this radio, and I really don't recommend this for somebody just getting in the hobby, is the software is a hot mess on this thing. We were promised firmware updates and all that stuff, but I mean, I don't want to flame any company out there, but Underground FPV, OpenTX, Frsky, they're not really supporting this thing. Every single person who gets a actual Underground FPV, one of these things, when they go to update the firmware, their device ID is not logged in their system, so they've got to complain to people on Facebook, why is it not in there? Then you send them an email, then they add them. Like, these things are coming out of your own factory. These are produced by you. Why on earth is this not in a database so the end user doesn't have to go through all this bullshit the second they get the radio and they want to update it? It's like, what the hell are you guys doing? This is such a great piece of hardware, but you guys are really screwing up by not following up on the software. It does run OpenTX, but I don't think OpenTX is really supporting this thing. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm sure you guys will tell me, but I still absolutely love this radio. I love every bit of it except for the software. Like I said, it's a hot mess. You can't flash your transmitter modules through the transmitter bay, which is, I mean, this thing is pretty much built around Crossfire, but I mean, the R9 stuff and all the other JR modules, like the XJT module, which I use for all my other Frsky quads, that works fine. The R9M works fine on it. Up to 100 milliwatts. You go any higher than that, and I have issues with it shutting off in flight. I have issues with it starting reliably. I have issues with it shutting off reliably. It does have internal charging, which is great. It uses 18650s. The menu system's getting better, but it's still not up to like Frsky quality. There's just an issue with the way things work. The touchscreen's really responsive. I really like the touchscreen. It's just the software. Like, there's been almost no communication from anybody about updates for this things, and I think the only updates that are coming out are just people kind of doing it on their own on the side, pushing out an update. If this radio was built by Frsky, there would be no competition out there. This thing would be the ultimate radio. I do despise the fact that I have to constantly put modules in there because this does transmit Frsky protocol, whatever that is, and nobody uses Frsky, at least nobody I know, and it comes with receivers, which is cool, but I'll never put them in a quad. Everything I have is Frsky, just like a lot of other people. But, and I tell you, this thing is really, really nice. I really love this radio, but the software is really making me kind of not happy about it, especially with this thing here, because it is, I mean, it's a little bit smaller. It's definitely a little bit lighter, but you know this is going to be constantly updated and backed by Frsky and OpenTX because of all their affiliations. This is going to be a really good radio. If you want a full-size-ish radio, at least with full-size gimbals, go for this thing. This thing is great. It is going to be even better. Oh yeah, it does use the smaller modules, so you're not going to be able to stick anything with like a JR style module in here until somebody develops a way to 3D print a mount for it, which it'll happen. These things are super easy to modify. The pins aren't any different than pretty much anything else out there, so I wouldn't be worried about that. This thing will eventually work with everything. It's just a matter of time. Or if you stick with the Frsky ecosystem, it'll work right now, except for D8 or multi protocol, unless you're on a nightly. Yeah. But anyways, that's I don't know, it's kind of a roundup of like all the weird little questions I've been getting asked about radios. If you want, if you're curious about anything else about any of these radios, like drop me a message. Let me know what you want to know. If you want more clarification on different things about all of these, let me know. What do you think about these radios? If you were new into this hobby, had no hardware, what radio would you get? Just kind of curious. What would you recommend to a new person who was getting into this with no hardware? How about the person who's been in it for a while that has a couple small quads, but they fly mostly big things with D16 receivers in it? What do you think? What do you think of these radios? I mean, if you've ever held any of these, what are your opinions? I'm kind of curious what everybody else thinks. All right, guys, that's enough rambling for one day for me. I would put my X9D on here, but I actually sold it last week because I will never use that radio again because it is just too damn big. But that's just my opinion. All right, guys, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. If you like what I'm doing here, please click that bell and subscribe. Comment below. And if you're interested in any of this stuff here, check out the affiliate links at the bottom. Or my affiliate vendors that, hey, I'm doing stuff here, and they're more than happy to send me whatever I'm curious about. And without those affiliate links and without you guys clicking through those things, I couldn't do this. And I love doing this stuff. I love bringing new items, new products, new opinions, new views to the community. All right, like I said, enough rambling. I will see you next time.